Hello, my name is Matthew, and just yesterday I was watching a video on Summer's channel. Her channel is Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats, and she made a video talking about her 20 favorite novels, and of course it was super interesting and got my own gears turning. And last night I spent some time trying to make a list of my probably 10 favorite novels, and I found it to be much more challenging than I had um, thought. I thought maybe I would just easily put together a list, and what I came to terms with is I probably have a spike two or three or four favorite novels that flattens out and in all directions with novels that I really like, but not absolute favorites. I'm still working on it. I think I can come up with maybe a top 10 list, or maybe not in order, but just 10 favorite novels. But while I was looking around last night, um, I just started thinking about short story writers and short story collections that are my favorites, and that list just came together much more easily or naturally. And I thought I would go through, in no particular order, some of my favorite short story writers or collections. And I have uh, 10 here, and then I'll say honorable mentions, or um, other short story works that could really be interchangeable. It could be a top 15 or whatever. Um, and the first honorable mention, and the only reason it wouldn't be absolutely in my top 10, it's a silly reason, but it's The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I just don't have a physical copy, so I don't have anything to show. Um, but there is not a collection of short stories or stories that I have read with so much alacrity. I have so many memories of reading those Holmes stories late into the night in bed, and finishing one and checking the page count on the next short story and thinking, I can read this before I fall asleep. Um, Everything about them is just so um, comforting. The murder mysteries, and following Sherlock and Watson and their relationship, and how Watson is watching Sherlock, and they're just consistently good. They get better and better every time I go back to them. So that's that. Um, and then Paris Spleen by Baudelaire. I don't know if I would put this in a top 10 collection. It's one of my absolute favorite books, but it's a curiosity, and I'm not even sure if it counts as a short story collection. Baudelaire considered this poems in prose, so they are very short. Let me see if I can. Some of them are just like one. So there's two stories right there. The Dog and the Scent Bottle, Venus and the Motley Crew. Um, they're so rich, and the language is luxurious. Baudelaire's voice comes out loud and clear, and uh, like the best short story writers, he gives a whole view of the world, or at least a panoramic view through the lens of his own eye. And yeah, Paris Spleen, one of my favorites. Another one that I don't think I would put in a top 10 list is the three short stories by Flaubert. It's A Simple Heart, Saint Julian, and Herodotus, or Herodias. And as far as short story collections go, it's just so sparse. There's only three of them. There's three of the best short stories that you can read, but it's a small count. And I think for years now, but at some point I came to terms with my own reading taste, and I just don't think I like James Joyce. This is Dubliners. I've read this countless times. I enjoy it. I've had a lot of fun um, reading these stories and thinking what do they mean, and the meaning behind um, the the characters or the plot, or what sort of illusion is he making. It's again, you get this wide view of um, either Dublin or Ireland at the time. But as far as when I think about books or novels or short stories that I love, um, I'm not sure how much pure reading enjoyment I've gotten out of these short stories, or James Joyce in general. Um, Through my 20s, this was one of the main names of writers that you have to know, and to a detrimental extent, that you have to admire and love, and it just doesn't do it for me, not in that way. And this is an author, short story collection, short story writer that is easily interchangeable with the other ones that I'll show, and it's just Chekhov. This is, I just pulled out one of the newer ones. This is translated by Richard Pever and Larissa Volonkonsky. And as far as short stories go, short story writers, this is a master of his craft, one of the, not inventors, but innovators in what we consider the form and function of a short story. And as a whole, it's incredibly just so impressive how wide-ranging his stories are, and characters from all walks of life, the whole range of emotions, the humor and silliness and seriousness and tragedy, and everything in between you can find. It's just like I've said, the best short story collections are whole worlds between covers. You can find that in novels, but it's difficult and extremely rare. I find even the best novels have much more of a focused lens or view of the world, whereas short story collections can just branch out in a way that is hard to show in a novel form. And then now, like the proper top 10 list, I think it's 10 books. And of course, I'll just show this first, but Guy de Maupassant, I just picked up a collection at random. I have a handful. This is The Necklace and Other Short Stories, and this collection, I thought, it also gives an idea of Maupassant's range, but it has one themed section on tales of French life, and then another section, tales of war, and tales of the supernatural. And Maupassant, even though some of it, if you read them straight through, they can feel very similar, he was still a wide-ranging and versatile writer, and he shows off much more prolifically than Flaubert how efficient and concise the language can be, in just a phrase or a few words describe something with incredible accuracy, or one line that will tell you everything you need to know about a person. And he's known for those kind of surprise twist endings, the shocking last line. but not all of them have that novelty. Um, and they're not all masterpieces, but the worst short story in here is still, for my own consideration, just uh, head and shoulders above the average short story, or a very good short story by another average writer. Uh, the short stories of Truman Capote, um, and I'm not sure how um, formally great these short stories are. I think he's a very good writer. I just am blinded with my own fondness or nostalgia. These are there's maybe six short stories in here that I read over and over again. I've mentioned and talked about Thanksgiving Visitor and Christmas Memory, and there's other ones. I think um, I think this is the best of Truman Capote for his writing output. I think he did very well in the short story form, and not only does he write children really well, um, he writes with. I think I'm just rereading some of this on the back of here, but that childhood wonder. There's an innocence. It reminds me in some ways of a darker, more deranged Mayberry from the Andy Griffith show. There's some perversity, but it's innocent and has the memory of a place that never really existed. That kind of feeling. A modernist or postmodernist or whatever he's called. The short stories of Donald Barthelme, and he has two maybe very well-known collections: the '60s stories, and then I think the other one's called 40 Stories. I just pulled out this one. I don't have a preference in the actual collection, but these are unlike Chekhov or Maupassant, which are just short stories in that kind of perfect form that you expect to get out of a short story. Donald Barthelme is so experimental. He takes chances and uh, writes in ways that are just very curious, like a short story written as a question answer, um, and other things like that, where the way that Dennis Diderot or Tristram Shandy or other writers, where they just don't take any of the trappings of the form as gospel and try things, and I love it, and I think he's a great, very clean, minimal, efficient writer as well. He's one of my favorites, and funny, dark and funny. Exemplary stories by Cervantes, um, and this is an example of just a masterful storyteller, and you get the feeling that someone is telling you a good story, maybe over a fire or at an inn or across the bar. Um, that may be stories that you've already kind of known or heard, and now you're going to hear it from the best storyteller. Um, let's see. The Little Gypsy Girl, Recanete and Cortadillo, The Glass Graduate, The Power of Blood. There's a handful in here, and it's such a great companion or an addition to Don Quixote. I wish there was more English works available. I'm still not really sure how much he wrote, but this is wonderful. And apparently this was more popular in his lifetime than Don Quixote. Sketches from a Hunter's Album, Ivan Turgenev. And it's these short stories loosely connected with our narrator or author, um, just out in the Russian countryside, having interactions or episodes with country folk, people that he's running into at watering holes, and having these little moments. I think it bridges that gap. And they're just phenomenal. The short stories are amazing, but um, I do think Turgenev um, bridges a gap between Chekhov or Maupassant to the kind of short stories that you would find in um, James Joyce or some ways Hemingway or Beckett or was it Raymond Carver or Chandler, one of the Raymonds, where the the climax of the story, instead of an event, can just be a revelation. To finish a short story, and it gives you pause, not from a big development or a wow factor ending, but just something to think about. And it's beautifully written. Letters from My Windmill by Alphonse Daudet or Daudet. Still don't know how to say it. And um, it's very similar to the short stories of Turgenev in the sense of um, we have a theme running through where our main character um, was a cosmopolitan Parisian who's leaving the big city life to go out to a small town or village and spend time in the pastoral landscape. And they're absolutely beautiful and touching. So many of the stories touch on the idea that time is passing by and the world is moving past you, and so um, the people and places in this short story feel antiquated and forgotten, and the tender part or the bittersweet part is although you can never get back to that world, it's a world that in hindsight you want to spend more time in. Short stories by Edgar Allan Poe. Like I've said throughout, the idea of creating this world, um, a panoramic view of a world. Poe's stories create an atmosphere. It feels like all of these characters and stories and events that are happening in these gothic, macabre stories are kind of in a slightly parallel universe. You can tell that the air is different. And not many people can create an atmosphere like Edgar Allan Poe. And also extremely innovative with the detective tale and all that. And speaking of creating an atmosphere, the short stories of Kafka. Um, I think this is one of the rare examples of a relatively modern author creating a whole new human experience or detailing a human experience that is maybe universal but very modern. That unique feeling of absurdity and dread that you get throughout all of Kafka's stories, but it's almost like he started expressing a new feeling that, as soon as it was expressed, was universally relatable. Being trapped in some unwinnable, absurd situation, having unnecessary restrictions, and that feeling you have when you call a customer service hotline, that feeling. Dorothy Parker, the complete Dorothy Parker, well worn, well read book. I absolutely love the. This is actually it has poems and letters and things like that in here as well. A couple of these do, the Edgar Allan Poe. And for the one side of the coin where you have Kafka's experience of the modern problems, you also have Dorothy Parker's view of the modern world and modern problems, and she's just so funny and enjoyable and companionable. The dialogue just sparkles, and she's not just funny; she's um, insightful. I absolutely just love Dorothy Parker. And the last one, which I'm not even sure if it's considered a short story collection. I imagine it's not, but the Decameron by Boccaccio. And I haven't read this translation. I had an older, I had a different older translation and copy that kind of fell apart. But um, these short stories, the premise. 10 young Florentines, 7 women and 3 men flee the Black Death of 1348 by escaping to the countryside overlooking the city. And they pass their time telling stories to one another, night after night, day after day. And it's the best. The uh, like uh, Daudet or Turgenev, where it's a whole. It's a collected work told through the format of short stories. Also similar to the Canterbury Tales, which I haven't uh, read yet in its entirety. This is the same idea. You just have different voices and different people telling stories. And in the world, in the context of the story, the goal is to be entertaining. And so they're telling these entertaining, funny, ribald, licentious, short stories. And they're just incredible. Um, and there's a whole world within these pages. And that's it. A whole bunch of short story collections. Um, I'm pretty sure I'll make um, a list of favorite novels. My part of my concern is the kind of pretenses that I have to kind of unspoken um, rules to a list like that. I wouldn't want to have a top 10 list of novels and have 4 of them be Flaubert or something like that. So I'll give it some thought, because I don't want to show a book that's not really a favorite or whatever, just really good. Um, so a whole bunch of short story collections. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about these books. I would love to hear some of your favorite short story writers or collections or favorite short stories and anything like that. Um, and that's it. Thank you for watching, and leave a comment if you would like, and take care. Bye.